Missing persons.
Missing persons. Missing persons.
Missing persons.
Falls on Halloween.
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 Halloween. Halloweens.
For many, Halloween is a time of scary movies, spending time with friends and family, and celebrating a night of fun, make-believe, and hauntings. But there's also some very dark, strange, and tragic stories that have happened at this time of year. Many of these stories have no real explanation, or seem as though there are more to them, and they have baffled authorities for years. In this video, we'll discuss 3 of the strangest unsolved mysteries that occurred on and around Halloween. These cases are real, and families and lives were forever changed from these incidents, and so it's important to keep that in mind. Here are 3 unsolved mysteries that happened on Halloween.
And on Halloween night in 2001, just like many of her peers, Cindy went out with friends. Hours later, her friends dropped her off at her apartment complex. That was the last time she was seen.
In 2001, Hyun Jong-sung, who went by Cindy Song, was a 21-year-old college student from Penn State University. Cindy, originally born in South Korea, moved to the United States when she was 15 for her studies, eventually settling in State College in Pennsylvania. State College is a tight-knit college town, with many staying there to attend Penn State University. Cindy was studying integrative arts and had the goal of becoming a graphic designer. She was known as being very friendly, cheerful, and absolutely loved music. Cindy had a personal blog that she treated like a journal, where she shared some of her interests like music, film, and art. She also shared some of her daily accomplishments and struggles on this blog. On Halloween night, like many students in a college town, Cindy went out with her 2 friends, named Stacy and Lisa. She was dressed as a bunny and spent the night dancing with her friends at a popular nightclub known as the Players Nightclub. They partied at the club until the early hours of November 1st. Afterwards, they went to a friend's house and spent a few hours there, hanging out and playing video games. At around 4 in the morning, Cindy was dropped off at an apartment complex by her friend Stacy. Cindy exited the car, waved goodbye, and walked towards her apartment. This was the last time that Cindy was ever seen. Cindy's roommate, Catherine, was also out of town during Halloween, and when she returned, Cindy was nowhere to be found. Cindy also didn't show up to work, and after nobody knew where Cindy was, including her friends, a missing persons report was filed. The only items that were on Cindy when she was last seen that were now in the apartment were her backpack, cell phone, and the false eyelashes that she wore on her night out. This indicates that she definitely entered her apartment when she was dropped off. Her wallet and keys were also missing, which might mean that she likely went out again after she was dropped off, as she often frequented a 24-hour convenience store nearby. After a long night, she was probably really hungry, and so it makes sense to go out and quickly grab a bite to eat before coming back and changing out of her costume. There were also no signs of struggle or forced entry in the apartment, which likely means that she left the apartment of her own free will, and she likely disappeared right after she left again for the night. There was also no activity on her credit cards after the assumed time of disappearance, which was after 4 a.m. There was no surveillance footage of Cindy entering the convenience store either, and so this disappearance likely happened right after she left the house again. After she was determined to be missing, a police investigation began. Many in the town and in the university put up posters regarding Cindy's disappearance, and it became a community effort to try to find her. Days turned to weeks, which turned into months, and there was no sign or any evidence of anyone taking her, and her disappearance remained strange and tragic. Her family even flew in from South Korea and pleaded with the police to continue the search, but the search was eventually called off when there were little to no leads whatsoever. Cindy's friends were also interviewed, her phone records were searched, and the town and surrounding areas were searched as well, including the nearby woods, but no substantial leads were found. It seemed almost like Cindy vanished into thin air. Early investigations revealed that Cindy broke up with her boyfriend shortly before she disappeared, and so her mental state may not have been the best. But after further investigation, including interviews with friends and roommates, it seemed as though she was handling the breakup normally, as she was a little sad, but nothing that was out of the ordinary of a normal breakup. And she was optimistic about the future of her life. She was going out, spending time with friends, as well as being focused on her studies. All signs pointed that Cindy did not run away, including the fact that she had tickets to the Britney Spears concert in December of that year, and she was also very excited to graduate the following year. Cindy also purchased a computer a few days prior, and it was pending delivery at the time. And so if she did all this, it's very unlikely that she would just run away. There'd be no reason to at that point. There would be more signs that she was maybe selling her belongings or anything along those lines, but none of that happened. She was actually investing in her future, so it's very unlikely that she ran away. Something strange about this case was that it was reported that a few days after Cindy's disappearance, in the Philadelphia Chinatown district that was nearly 200 miles from Cindy's apartment, a woman matching Cindy's description was seen yelling and crying for help as she was being forced into a car. The eyewitness sent this information to the police, who gave the description of a man with an olive to light brown complexion and medium-length hair. This man has never been identified, and there were no further leads regarding this specific event. Police also don't believe that this is tied to the Cindy Song case. So one thing to note is that there was definitely some conflict between Cindy Song's family and the local police department on the case. Song's family believed that the local authorities were being negligent in their investigation, focusing more on due process rather than trying to find Cindy. For example, the authorities didn't treat the Song case as a crime, instead looking at it as a missing persons case. This meant that they had a tougher time getting search warrants. The local authorities believed that cultural differences were the reason for the conflict and that they were investigating properly. Many student groups sided with the family, eventually creating the Coalition for the Search for Cindy Song, stating that the authorities did not take this case seriously enough and were negligent and potentially racially biased, and there were a lot of frustrating faults with the investigation. Regardless of whether this is true or not, racial bias is something that can often happen in cases involving visible minorities. The local authorities eventually cut off all communication with the Song family, leading to even more anger and frustration. Imagine if you were doing whatever it took to find a family member or friend, and the authorities just cut off complete communication with you. That would be incredibly devastating, regardless of the reasons why. 2 years later, in 2003, there was a sudden report of a lead. A man named Hugo Selensky was arrested for the murders of several people after several bodies were found buried in his backyard. One of his associates, named Paul Weekly, was arrested, and in order to get a reduced sentence, he led police to Selensky's property, where several bodies were discovered. Weekly told police that Selensky and another man named Michael Kurkowski had taken Cindy Song and ended her life, burying her remains afterwards. Michael Kurkowski was actually one of the victims found buried on the property years later. These claims were shocking, and it seemed as though this case had been solved with this tragic and terrible ending. The story goes that Selensky and Kurkowski had taken Cindy that night and put her in a walk-in freezer on Selensky's property, with Kurkowski being the one to end her life. But her remains were not found on the property. Then, Selensky ended Kurkowski's life because of a financial dispute, but also growing frustrations, including the fact that Kurkowski may have kept Cindy's bunny ears as a trophy. After investigating and not finding Cindy's body, it was determined that there wasn't any evidence that Hugo Selensky had any interaction with Cindy Song, and so he was never officially charged for her death. The fact that Weekly had led police to this property where multiple crimes were committed and also admitted that Cindy was one of the victims, it's strange that this case hasn't been pushed forward. I've read online that there may be more victims of Selensky, but they might have been washed away in the creek nearby, but those reports are unconfirmed at this point. So Paul Weekly's computer also had multiple searches on Cindy Song's case, and so the rumors are that he might have just looked up the report to try to frame Selensky and maybe reduce his sentence, because he was going to jail as well for a bunch of other crimes. Police also investigated Paul Weekly, but it was determined that he had no connection to Cindy's disappearance either. To this day, no remains matching Cindy's have ever been found on Selensky's property, and Selensky was never officially charged for her disappearance, although he does remain as a person of interest for this case. So that was pretty much left at that. Honestly, this is really bizarre that it hasn't been pushed forward more. Cindy's body may have just been moved, especially after the publicity surrounding the case, but at this point, this seems like the only potential lead out there. It's been over 20 years, and there are still no answers or leads regarding Cindy's disappearance. It's important to remember the real human impact behind this unsolved case. Cindy was a young woman with her whole life ahead of her, and the pain of her loss still continues for her family, friends, and the whole community that hoped for her safe return. Let's all hope that Cindy's family will get their answers to what happened to Cindy someday. Halloween is a night of fun and excitement, but because of that, many can be in vulnerable or dangerous situations, such as being alone outside late at night. This is also a reminder that even though many celebrate Halloween, it is important to remain vigilant and cautious, especially on days like these, where fun and danger can overlap.
Jeremy Jourdain was last seen in Bemidji. Jourdain was 17 at the time of his disappearance. The Bemidji Police Department reports it is continuing to investigate Jourdain's disappearance as an active case and would like to bring closure for the Jourdain family and the community.
Jeremy Jourdain was a 17-year-old who lived in Cass Lake, Minnesota with his grandfather, who had raised him and who he was living with at the time. He was also very close to his aunt Alexandra, who also raised him. Jeremy was like many teenagers in 2016. He loved video games like Call of Duty, played sports, and was even on the high school basketball team. Jeremy's friends and teammates also gave him the nickname Worm. Jeremy loved basketball and was very hardworking in school as well. Jeremy had dreams of getting a basketball scholarship for college, and so he was definitely a well-accomplished athlete. Jeremy was indigenous and was a part of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, specifically the Leech Lake Band. Jeremy was also known to be a bit of a homebody and spent a lot of time at home. But like many teenagers, he wished to go out and spend time with his friends on Halloween night. On Halloween night, on October 31st, 2016, Jeremy went to a party or get-together in Bemidji, Minnesota, and everything seemed normal. Jeremy had friends and family at the party, including his sister. At some point in the night, Jeremy and a few friends went outside to smoke a cigarette. Suddenly, Jeremy jumped up, said, "I'm out of here," and ran away from the party. He ran down the road, away from sight, and was never seen again. Some of the people at the party, including friends and family, followed him, but nobody could catch up to him. You gotta remember that Jeremy was a star athlete, and so he might have been too fast for anyone to catch up to him. It was assumed that Jeremy was headed home, but it wasn't clear as to the reason why. Was there an argument or disagreement with anyone at the party? I'm not too sure, as there isn't a ton of information as to why he had ran off. One thing I found really odd was that nobody from the party really chased after Jeremy, besides maybe running behind him. Somebody at the party might have had a car or something. I might be missing a detail or two here, but I personally just found that really strange, especially if someone runs out of a party like Jeremy did. And the fact that he was 15 miles away from his house, and so it was assumed that he likely wouldn't be walking home. But everyone might have been drinking at the party, and so nobody was able to drive, or maybe by the time they caught up, Jeremy had sadly already disappeared. I'm not too sure. The next day, when Jeremy did not come home, Jeremy's grandfather filed a missing persons report at 9 a.m. The police acted very quickly, beginning the investigation, starting on the streets near where the party happened. Jeremy was 6'4" and weighed around 175 pounds. At the party, he was wearing a blue and gray hooded sweatshirt, blue jeans, and black and white Air Jordan shoes with elephant print. Oftentimes, police and authorities don't treat Indigenous missing persons cases the same as other cases, as oftentimes the cases are treated as runaways. This tragically means that many Indigenous peoples are not classified as missing persons, even though many go missing every year. In this specific case, though, it seems as though the authorities have treated this as a missing persons case and have given the case the proper respect in terms of trying to find Jeremy. Or at least, that's what I've read online. During the investigation, dogs began to track his scent from the party. They only went about 2 blocks, or approximately 500 feet, before they lost his scent at the end of the road. This is incredibly strange, as the scent didn't just slowly go away, it completely disappeared. This might mean that Jeremy was picked up in a car, or he maybe went into a vehicle or something else at this point. The road was very close to the highway, specifically Highway 2. Police investigated the people at the party, checking their vehicles as well as interviewing the people, but no leads were found. Many volunteers, police officers, and even Border Patrol officers began to search for Jeremy in the surrounding areas. I've seen people talk online about the town of Bemidji, stating that a lot of crime happens in the town. From what I could find though, most crime in Bemidji is non-violent, and a case like this would definitely be out of the ordinary. There are also several lakes nearby where Jeremy went missing, such as Lake Irving and Lake Bemidji, but no evidence was found in this area. This area also has many dense forests, and with the highway, other roads, and lakes nearby, there are several places where Jeremy could have gotten lost or disappeared from. Once again, if Jeremy was to walk home, it would have been an incredibly long walk, and it would have taken him several hours. This doesn't count the fact that the weather is very cold in November, and so it's very unlikely that Jeremy was trying to walk home. He also seemed as though he was in the right frame of mind up until the point he ran out, and so this situation is even stranger. This tragic case reminds me a lot of the story of Lars Mittank, a 28-year-old German man who went missing in Bulgaria in 2014. Lars went on holiday with his friends to Bulgaria, and after getting into a fight over a football or soccer match with opposing fans, Lars sustained an ear injury. He then began to act paranoid and erratic, and when he went to the airport to fly home a couple of days later, Lars went to the airport doctor. At the doctor's office, Lars suddenly jumped up, yelled, "I don't want to die here, I have to get out of here," and ran out of the airport and he was never seen again. This is really similar to the case with Jeremy, but a key difference is that Lars had an ear injury from the fight and was on antibiotic medication, which might have caused a negative reaction, and so that could have possibly led to him having the reaction he did. But from what I've read, everything was okay with Jeremy at that night, and there were no reports of fighting or the potential of any side effect from any medications. So this is really strange. Could something have happened at the party that made Jeremy scared and run away? Could he have maybe been drugged unknowingly, which led to him panicking and running out of the house? Was his cigarette maybe laced with something? I really hope not, but the sudden behavior change from someone who is known to be mellow, calm, and happy would be really out of character, and there have been cases in the past, like Lars, where it was assumed that a side effect of a drug could have caused this erratic behavior. It really is a strange situation. I really hope that this video and other videos on Jeremy can spread awareness, and all it takes is one person to recognize his face, and maybe this case can be solved someday in the future. Jeremy would be 25 years old as of 2024 when this video is being recorded. Jeremy's family also has a Facebook page dedicated to finding him, and there are searches conducted to find Jeremy to this day. The community really loved Jeremy, and he honestly seemed like a really great guy. Even looking through these photos, he just seems like such a friendly and nice kid, and it's honestly so sad as he had his entire future ahead of him. I wish Jeremy's family all the best, and I really hope that they will get the answers that they so rightfully deserve someday. Jeremy's disappearance is a tragic reminder of how quickly things can change, especially when enjoying what seems to be a fun night out, like a Halloween party. Halloween parties can often involve large gatherings and unfamiliar environments. It's easy to get caught up in the fun, but as Jeremy's story tragically shows, personal safety should always be a priority. If you're attending a party or event, please be aware of your surroundings and make sure you have a safe way to get home. Travel with friends, have a plan for the night, and make sure someone knows where you are at all times. When you are searching the web for unsolved mysteries, you'll often come across many different types of stories, whether it's terrible crimes, missing persons, or odd anomalies. You'll find out about many of these, but sometimes you'll come across something really strange, a mystery that is so obscure, and yet it is something that could happen to any of us. There are points in our lives where we might run into a strange situation that on the surface seems normal, but when you dig deeper, you realize that something incredibly frightening was hiding in plain sight this entire time. This story is one of them. So when doing research for this video, my initial intention was to bring forth different unsolved mysteries of missing people around Halloween, as these cases are oftentimes currently active, and it could give them as much publicity as possible to help provide assistance to the families affected. But this final case was so strange, and it hasn't really been discussed anywhere. It's significantly different than the first two, and yet it is incredibly eerie. I don't think there's enough information for a standalone video here, and so I decided to add this mystery to this video. On October 29th, 2012, 2 days before Halloween, a father and daughter were out kayaking together on the Eel River in Humboldt County in California. For many years in the area, the father and daughter would see a sneaker tip coming out of the ground in this area. The thing is, oftentimes these riverside areas are full of trash and strange objects, and so if you saw this, you would likely just ignore it and continue on with your day, which is exactly what the two did. But one time, while out kayaking, they noticed something strange. That one shoe that they would often see was now accompanied by another shoe. there was a second sneaker tip to the right of the first, and it was slightly lower down than the first. But just like the first, it was sticking out of the ground, as if it was attached to something below. The father pulled out his camera and took a picture. This is what he captured. Now, in this moment, what would you do? Would you ignore it and continue your day? Or would your curiosity make you want to see what exactly is going on here, as you might just be stumbling upon a potential crime scene? The man who took the picture decided on the latter. Using a stick, the man began digging and digging and digging. He must have been wondering what it could be, hoping that it was just a coincidence. The same pair of shoes could have ended up together, or maybe they were stuck on some trash or debris. There has to be a rational explanation for this. Well, after digging and digging, the man got his answer. He dug out the shoe and discovered a sock full of bones. The man thought that roots had grown into it, and he started pulling it really hard. But that was when the foot was removed off the leg bone below. This wasn't just a shoe. It wasn't just a sock, or bones within a sock. It was an entire skeleton. After discovering the skeleton, local police were called in, and the following was found. A t-shirt that said the following: "Before I started working here, I drank, smoked, and used foul language for no reason at all. Thanks to this job, I now have a reason." A pair of pants, the shoes, and also a pocket knife were found. An investigation was opened, and analysis was quickly done of the body. The remains were believed to belong to a white male, who was around 25 to 45 years old. His height was anywhere from 5'11" to 6'5", or around 1.8 to 2 meters tall. DNA analysis began to identify the body, and the DNA profile was uploaded to CODIS, which is a software platform that stores DNA information. After further investigation, it was discovered that the DNA of the skeleton did not match any known missing person. As police often collect DNA samples from family members of missing people in this area, it was possible that this person was not from the area. And as nobody has reached out, it's also possible that the family of the victim does not even know that he is missing, as he might have been out of touch with his family. I haven't been able to find much more information on this case, and so if you know anything else about this case, please let me know in the comments below. Now, this immediately reminded me of the feet incidents that have been occurring in British Columbia, in Canada, since the late 2000s.
Police in the Pacific Northwest are scratching their heads after a human foot in a running shoe washed up on shore. Thing is, it's not the first time it's happened. It's not the second or even the third time that it's happened. ABC's Neil Karlinski has the story.
During this period of time, more than 20 detached human feet have been found washed up on shore inside shoes, but there is no link to foul play or crime. This is likely due to the decomposition of the body in water, and with the shoes having buoyancy, they might detach from the body and float up in the water. But the sheer number of feet found and the mystery of whose feet they are from are still a mystery in British Columbia. In all these cases, though, it was often just a foot that was found, but here it is an entire body, so this is an entirely different situation. Regarding the British Columbia feet incidents, let me know if you want me to make a video on this in the future. Now, I can't imagine the feeling upon discovering this. The whole time, that shoe was just there. Many probably had seen it, and it almost became like a route marker of sorts. The question remains, who was this man? Did his life end elsewhere, and then he was buried in a shallow grave? Did he wash up on shore? How long has he been here for? There are a ton of questions here that are unanswered. It was possible that he was someone from out of town, or even a hitchhiker. It is honestly really terrifying how he was buried, with his feet sticking up. May this man rest in peace, and hopefully the family of this man can get their answers someday. Something else I noticed when looking into this is that in Humboldt County, there are a lot of strange cases of bodies and remains being found in the woods. On Reddit, a user actually created a list of a bunch of suspicious deaths or discoveries throughout Humboldt's history. From 2011 to 2014, there were over 10 strange cases of bodies found in the dark woods of Humboldt County. 1 or 2 is strange enough, but more than 10 over a period of a couple of years? Is this just a coincidence, or is something more sinister at play here? I have no idea, but if you know of any other strange stories in Humboldt County, please let me know in the comments below. The fact that there are so many similar cases in a window of a few years might suggest that there is someone or some people behind these cases, including the one that we discussed today. Regardless, for now, this case also remains unsolved. We're left with unsettling questions about who this person was and how they tragically ended up here. Someone's life ended in isolation, far from the reach of help. This serves as a reminder of the importance of safety, especially as Halloween approaches and we find ourselves exploring new or unfamiliar environments. From tragic missing persons cases to terrifying discoveries, there are a ton of unsolved mysteries that have happened around Halloween. Even though Halloween is a time of celebration, it is important to be aware of your surroundings and remain vigilant. No matter who you are, always make sure you stay safe, because you never know who or what is lurking in the shadows. Hopefully these 3 cases have a more clear answer someday, but for now, they remain unsolved.
Hey kids, let's all have a safe Halloween.
Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to see more unsolved mysteries, check out some of my other videos right here. If you have any suggestions for videos, please let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all of your support, and as always, never stop wondering.